In a bustling London boutique, Emily was browsing racks of elegant dresses. Her 20th wedding anniversary was approaching, and she wanted something perfect. She loved surprises and imagined herself walking into their favorite restaurant in the new dress, dazzling her husband, Robert, just as she had 2 decades ago. As she turned to inspect a sparkling evening gown, her gaze fell on a couple across the store. The man was about Robert's height, dressed in a tailored suit, his hand resting protectively on a woman's shoulder. The woman, tall and graceful, was wearing a wedding dress, a delicate, lace-covered gown that shimmered under the store lights. Emily's heart skipped a beat. She was sure it was Robert. She moved closer, heart pounding, trying to confirm. As she approached, their voices became clearer. "Do you think this one suits me?" the woman asked, her voice sweet and familiar. She was looking at Robert, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. Robert smiled at her. "You look perfect in it," he replied softly, his gaze warm and approving. He touched her hand briefly, an intimate gesture that made Emily's stomach churn. She stood frozen, hiding behind a display of scarves, as Robert continued, "You're going to be the most beautiful bride." Emily felt a knot forming in her chest. Bride. The word echoed in her mind, growing louder with each repetition. Her husband was helping another woman choose a wedding dress. Just then, the woman turned, giving Emily a clearer view of her face. Emily's breath caught in her throat. The woman looked familiar, too familiar, but Emily couldn't quite place her. Was she a friend? Someone from Robert's office? Questions spiraled through Emily's mind as she tried to make sense of the scene unfolding before her. Unable to stand it any longer, she stepped out from behind the scarves. She took a deep breath, gathering the courage to confront them, but just as she was about to speak, the woman laughed. A soft, tinkling laugh that pulled Robert's attention entirely back to her. Suddenly, Robert's phone rang, breaking the moment. He answered, stepping aside briefly. Emily strained to hear his words. "Yes, I'll be there soon." "No, I haven't told her yet. Everything's ready. She has no idea," he whispered, his back to Emily. Emily's heart raced. Tell her what? Who is this woman? When Robert returned to the woman, he gave her a reassuring smile. "It's all going to be perfect, don't worry." Emily's mind whirled, unsure whether to reveal herself or retreat. Just then, Robert and the woman gathered their things, Robert taking her hand as they left the store together, still oblivious to Emily's presence. She stood in the boutique, numb, her anniversary dress forgotten. In her head, she heard Robert's words replaying over and over. She has no idea. Who was this woman? What was Robert hiding from her? Emily knew she'd have to find out, but at that moment, she wasn't ready for the answer, whatever it might be. As she left the boutique, the unanswered questions haunted her. But one thing was certain. Her marriage was no longer what it seemed. And, as she stepped out into the rain-drenched London streets, she felt the weight of the mystery between her and Robert growing heavier with each step. Emily wandered the rain-soaked streets of London, her mind racing with unanswered questions and conflicting emotions. The image of Robert with that mysterious woman trying on a wedding dress kept replaying in her mind like a relentless movie scene. She felt betrayed, confused, and yet a small part of her hoped there was a reasonable explanation. As she walked, she noticed the familiar sights of their neighborhood, the quaint coffee shop where they had their first date, the park where they used to walk hand in hand. Everything seemed tinged with uncertainty now. How could she confront Robert about what she saw? Should she confront him at all? A sudden gust of wind whipped through her hair, and she pulled her coat tighter around herself. The rain fell harder now, obscuring her vision, mirroring the storm brewing inside her. She needed answers, but she also feared what she might uncover. Back at home, the silence of their empty house enveloped her. She wandered from room to room, each corner holding memories of their life together, their laughter, their struggles, their dreams. She paused at their wedding photo on the mantelpiece, where they stood smiling, promising forever to each other. But now, forever felt uncertain. Emily sank into their favorite armchair, staring out into the darkness beyond the window. The unanswered questions gnawed at her, keeping sleep at bay. She picked up her phone, hesitating before typing a message to Robert. Should she confront him now, or wait until she understood more? Her thumb hovered over the screen, the cursor blinking expectantly, waiting for her next move. Whatever she chose, she knew their lives were about to change. The truth was out there, waiting to be uncovered, and Emily was determined to find it, no matter the cost. As the clock ticked on, rain continued to patter against the window pane, a relentless rhythm matching the turmoil in Emily's heart. The storm outside mirrored the one brewing within their marriage, and in that moment of uncertainty, Emily knew one thing for sure: nothing would ever be the same again. Days turned into weeks as Emily wrestled with her emotions, torn between confronting Robert and burying her suspicions. She found herself scrutinizing every detail of their past, searching for clues she might have missed, wondering how well she truly knew the man she married. Robert, meanwhile, seemed oblivious to Emily's inner turmoil. He continued with his usual routines, his demeanor unchanged. Yet Emily noticed subtle shifts in his behavior, fleeting glances, moments of hesitation that only fueled her uncertainty. One evening, as they sat across from each other at dinner, Emily couldn't bear the silence any longer. She looked at Robert, studying his face for any sign of guilt or remorse. "Robert," she began, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. "Who was she?" Robert looked up from his plate, surprise flickering across his features before he masked it with a practiced smile. "Who do you mean, Emily?" "The woman in the wedding dress," Emily pressed, her voice trembling slightly. "I saw you with her at the boutique." For a moment, Robert's mask slipped. His eyes darted away, and Emily caught a glimpse of something she couldn't quite define. Regret, perhaps, or fear. But just as quickly, his expression hardened. "I was helping a friend," Robert replied evenly, his tone controlled. She needed advice on her dress. It was nothing more than that. Emily's heart sank. His words sounded rehearsed, too perfect. She wanted to believe him, to trust that there was a simple explanation. But doubts lingered, stubbornly refusing to be dismissed. "And the phone call?" Emily pressed further, her voice now tinged with accusation. "What were you planning that you haven't told me?" Robert's jaw tightened imperceptibly. "It's work-related," he offered vaguely, his eyes avoiding hers. Emily felt a surge of frustration and hurt. How could he brush aside her concerns so easily? Their marriage, once a sanctuary of trust and love, now felt like a fragile facade. She knew she needed more than evasive answers. As Robert reached across the table, his hand tentatively touching hers, Emily pulled away instinctively. "I need to know the truth, Robert," she said quietly, her gaze steady. "Please." Robert's eyes softened, a flicker of vulnerability crossing his face before he composed himself. "Emily, He trailed off, his words caught in the air between them. The clock ticked on, each second stretching into eternity as they sat in uneasy silence. Emily waited, her heart pounding, hoping for the honesty that would either mend their shattered trust or confirm her worst fears. But as Robert opened his mouth to speak, the doorbell rang. A sudden interruption that shattered the fragile moment between them. Emily glanced at Robert, her heart sinking. Would the truth finally be revealed, or would it slip further out of reach? Robert and Emily exchanged a wary glance as the doorbell rang again, breaking the tense silence that hung between them. Emily's hand trembled slightly as she pushed her chair back and stood up, her eyes never leaving Robert's face. "I'll get it," Robert said quietly, his voice betraying none of the turmoil that Emily felt inside. He rose from his chair and walked towards the front door, his footsteps echoing in the hallway. Emily remained in the dining room, her mind racing with questions and uncertainties. She tried to steady her breathing, to prepare herself for whatever might come next. The truth, whatever it was, seemed poised to reveal itself at last. Moments later, Robert returned to the room, a small package in his hand. His expression was unreadable as he placed it on the table between them. "What's this?" Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Robert hesitated, his eyes flickering with a mixture of emotions. "It's for our anniversary," he replied finally, his voice tinged with regret. "I wanted it to be a surprise." Emily looked down at the package, her heart aching with conflicting emotions. Could it be that simple? A misunderstanding? A surprise gift? Or was there more to the story, hidden beneath the surface? Robert began, then faltered, as if unsure how to continue. "I know things have been difficult lately," he said at last, his voice earnest. "But please, open it. It's important to me." Emily's hands trembled as she reached for the package, her mind racing with doubt and hope. What would she find inside? And would it change everything, or only deepen the rift between them? As she tore open the wrapping, the truth, whatever it was, seemed closer than ever. Emily carefully unwrapped the package, her heart pounding in anticipation. Inside was a beautifully bound book, a collection of photographs, memories carefully curated over their 20 years together. Each page was a testament to their journey, their wedding day, travels around the world, quiet moments at home. Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as she flipped through the pages, the weight of her suspicions lifting with each cherished memory captured in the photographs. Robert stood beside her, silent yet hopeful, watching her reaction. "I wanted to remind us of everything we've shared," Robert said softly, his voice filled with emotion. "Especially now, when it feels like we're drifting apart." Emily looked up at him, her heart swelling with a mix of relief and love. In that moment, the tension that had gripped their marriage seemed to dissipate, replaced by a renewed sense of connection and understanding. "I'm sorry," Emily whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I doubted you." Robert shook his head gently, reaching for her hand across the table. "You had every right to question," he replied sincerely. "But I promise you, there's no one else. You're the only one I've ever loved." As they sat together, their hands intertwined, Emily felt a weight lift off her shoulders. The mystery of the woman in the wedding dress faded into insignificance against the backdrop of their shared history. What mattered now was their commitment to each other, their willingness to confront doubts and fears together. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving behind a calm, clear evening. In the warmth of their home, Robert and Emily lingered over the book of memories, reliving moments that had shaped their lives. The storm that had threatened to tear them apart had passed, leaving behind a deeper bond forged through honesty and forgiveness. And, as they closed the book and embraced, Emily knew that their love was stronger than any uncertainty, anchored in the enduring truth of their shared journey together.